Hi there, it's Angie, and welcome back to Midlife Magic and Mayhem. A little while back, I did a mini solo episode that was completely unscripted, basically unedited and unfiltered, and just me speaking what was on my mind in that moment. So, this is a version of that, except for this time, I have a companion in the form of my husband, Scott. So we are going to have a conversation that is basically unscripted, hopefully as unedited as possible, just to give you kind of a raw um, feel and behind the scenes of the kinds of things that we talk about. And a few years ago, we had an idea of having a podcast called Dinner with Us because we often have like amazing conversations while I'm cooking dinner. And we would often say to ourselves, damn, we should be recording this.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of a version of that. We are sitting in our dining room, a traditional Japanese dining room. We're actually on the floor on tatami mats. I think I pronounced that correctly. Forgive me if I did not. And we're going to have a version of this dinner with us type of conversation and the types of things that we talk about. And
a lot of times they come up through something that happened during the day.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Through both of our work, something will arise, and we don't discuss individuals, but we discuss ideas. We discuss things that have come up that we can grapple with that had the day be stimulating, like there was something that was going on. So that's typically the type of conversation that we'll have when we converge at 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night each night when we come together, because we're empty nesters, and what we do is we have amazing nights together, and we're going to share a little bit of that with you today.
Yeah. So, and we would even do this before we were empty nesters.
That's true.
We would always be in conversation while I'm.
And our kids are
Something about me cooking dinner has us get into these really great. Interesting, sometimes profound, sometimes ultimately silly. So whatever they are.
A lot of silly.
Yeah, they just kind of happen. So I thought we would start with a concept or an idea that comes up a lot when I'm in conversation with women, people, anyone really. When I say, yes, my husband and I have been together for 30 years. We've been married for 28. And people's eyes get really wide when I say that, like, holy shit, how did you manage that? And it is. It's a thing. And especially when I tell them that we're actually better now than we've ever been in pretty much every single area of our relationship, communication, intimacy, just general working together. And by the way, we're together a lot. We both work from home. We have one car right now, so I mean we're together all the time. So
that's by design. We've actually, and then we've moved up to this incredible mountain retreat area on 5 acres of land outside of Boulder, Colorado. So now we're even more together, and but it's amazing. And we did it. It's all intentionally done. And there's no one I would rather be spending the time with. So this will be exciting.
So how do we manage this? Spending so much time together, being together for so long, and cultivated this relationship over time that is now gained even more momentum. Like as we're in our 50s, going into heading to the last third, the third act. I heard someone call it. And so how did we do that?
Yeah.
And one of the pillars I think that is really useful and could be useful for people to hear about is something that you actually use in your work. And it's the idea of occurring.
Yeah.
You use this a lot with your corporate clients. I use it some with my clients as well, but ultimately it's about relationships. So
sure.
I would love for us to have a discussion about this idea of occurring.
How
something occurs for you is a natural correlate of?
Well, performance in any situation, especially in the matters of the heart and mind, is a natural correlate to the way something occurs for you. right? So that sounds so obvious and simple, right? I ask, how does something occur for you? And you answer, and typically someone's going to go, fine, you know, I like that, or I don't like that, or whatever. And what I would posit is there's a lot more depth to this idea. And one of the areas that I find that cuts right to the chase of why things are the way they are is when I can get and work with someone or even myself to have some depth and understanding how things truly occur for you. I use this analogy a lot, and anyone who happens to listen to this who I've worked with has definitely heard this. I've used it twice today in coaching conversations with some clients. I'll just give sort of a high level understanding. And by the way, I do this in the form of a visual analogy because the brain thinks in images. Yeah. It processes things in images, not in text or even, voice like this. So if I could create this image, you can get some sense of what I mean by occurring. This is the analogy I use to describe it almost every day. I asked the client, hey, do you know anything about tennis? And almost invariably everyone does. They say, yeah, I know something about it. And I said, do you know who Roger Federer is? Do you know who Rafael Nadal is? And the majority of the time people say, of course, whatever. So then I'll give this visual. And it's all about how to understand occurring at its simplest level. So the way I would describe it is I can play tennis. I played at about a 4-0 level at my peak in the day. That's been some years ago. That's good club tennis type thing. I can play around. Now, Roger Federer is far away from a 4-0. He's one of the world's best of all time. And I'm on the other side of the court with him. And for some reason, I've ended up there. And I'm getting ready to play him. And this is how it is going to occur for me if I'm on the other side of the court. Like, what the hell am I doing here? I mean, this is insane. He's going to hurt me. I'm not even going to be able to see the ball. I won't be able to see the spin. I don't even know what's happening here. I'm terrified. All these people, and I should say I'm in a stadium here with him. So all these people look, I'm going to be embarrassed. They're going to be laughing at me. All of this stuff is going on the way it's occurring for me. And the way it's occurring for me is most likely not going to produce performance. It's not going to produce a performance that would be to win. It's going to give some type of performance, but not what I'm looking for. So that's one way it occurs. And then that's a natural correlate to the way it occurs for me, the performance I'll get. Now, let's say that Rafael Nadal is on the other side of the net from Federer. It occurs totally different for him. It just occurs like, where am I going to put the ball on the other side of the court to win the point? All that other trash I have is not there. It's simply there, and that's why his performance most likely will be a natural correlate to something that he's looking for versus the situation I was in. Essentially occurring is this hidden machine underneath that when examined, a lot of things start to make sense. One of the things I remember really well many years ago when you and I were probably in a pretty flat time in our relationship. Maybe 15 years ago or something like that. And the kids were a certain age and we were busy and it was flat. And can I get a little bit of personal here? Is that...
You can do whatever you want. You can say whatever words you want.
Okay.
We are an explicit conversation.
Okay.
Like you can say anything. Open book.
Yeah, this is, I guess, possibly could get me canceled. But yeah, fine, cancel me. But I remember we're in that period of time and things, it was just flat and it wasn't going well. And I say going well, there just wasn't a lot of performance. I mean, we were cohabitating and all that. But
we were quote unquote busy.
Yeah, we were busy.
Life was busy.
So I came to you one day and I got really curious about this occurring. I wonder how I occur for Angie. And at the time, it really wasn't that type of energy, if I'm being honest. It was like we were struggling in a place where I really wanted to know, like, we needed to take a different path.
Things weren't going well.
Not as, I mean, they weren't catastrophic. It's just like every marriage. We're just in that stage.
Yeah.
And so we sat down at the bar. I created a safe space for us to have this conversation, and it was intentional. And I asked the question. I was like, what's it like to be married to me? And you immediately, without pause, and this is how I know with Angie, by the way, if she takes any type of pause, I know she's equivocating in her mind and she's trying to think things, she does that. She's thoughtful. There was no pause here. Essentially, her answer was, the way it occurs for me to be married to you is like I'm just a walking vagina. Yeah. And in many ways, that was a really tough thing to hear, right? That's brutal to hear. If you think that's the way you're going to answer after being married for 15 years or 14 years or whatever it was at the time. And that alone was really instructive in the fact that, first of all, I didn't consider that at all. I didn't think that at all. And when you said it, I think you're exactly right. When I look deeper into the way that things were occurring for me at the time, this is definitely going to get me canceled. I'm definitely done here. But
One episode.
That's right. But that was the truth of the matter. And the truth of the matter was that I didn't know that was running me. And I didn't know that it was creating that over there with you, that you would answer it so fast.
It's such a powerful question.
Yeah. And then things started to make sense while we were kind of flat. And if I might approach you and try to be lovey where you might push me off. So it all became just sort of messy in there. And then it made sense because no one would want to walk around just being a sexual target, right?
A receptacle.
But that's when it all hit me. And then through further work I was doing, I've been in the coaching world. I've hired so many coaches myself. So I'm typically, I love to have these different perspectives. So this was something that was incredibly useful. Mm-hmm. And once I have understood that, then it kind of became a little addiction to ask everybody, like, what's it like? What's it like to be with me? My kids, by the way, we won't go into that. It's a very, very powerful and brutal question. Mm-hmm. And just as a side note, I'll typically request my clients do this with their own spouses. Yeah. Less than 50% will do it. Yeah. It's too painful to think about.
It's very confronting.
It's very confronting, especially if it's done in a way that's set up a context where there's a lot of truth that can come out. So that's when it can happen, because typically people won't speak from that place. So anyway, what I would say, back to your original question, like what happens here that has this thing really work right now and us have more fun than we've had and more, but not just fun. I mean, like a real deep, meaningful, life-affirming relationship, right? That's just so good. It all comes down to understanding that you can actually change this occurring, but you can't change it until you know it.
Yeah, you got to see it. Like you've got to actually know it exists before you can even hope to turn it a different direction.
Right, you have to surface it. Yeah. And so much lies underneath in our subconscious minds that get trapped there. Or we want them trapped because we don't want to have to deal with them. We don't want to have to face it. It's too painful. So we just keep things stuffed down. But I think what's happened with us, well, I know what's happened with us over all these years, is that we, first of all, have been absolutely committed to each other. Mm-hmm. And committed to who we are, not our bullshit stories about who we are. Like, someone asked me this morning, I was in a conversation with a doctor, and she was asking for some reason about our relationship, and she goes, "How's it work?" And I said, "It's because I know that my wife is an angel. I mean, I know it. And that's been a process of discovering, like, anything that goes on, the way that she occurs for me is she is an angel, like a real angel. Like you're a, but not, but it's true. And it serves as a baselining of occurring for me at every level. So almost anything can go around that, but this steady knowing and occurring that I'm married to an angel has everything else be small compared to that. And what I would say is, and what we both, and I'll stop this long diatribe, but what I would say is through that basic understanding, it handles everything, meaning the occurring has me know that you're this. And if something arises, like I think you're a bitch, or I think something's this, or I think whatever it is, it gives me the space to go, that's just an energy in here. That's not who she is. That's an energy. Maybe you need to go on a drive. And you need to let that energy move out before you have any more conversation, whatever it would be, because it's always stupid. It's always dumb. Mm-hmm. And just let the energy fade out. And what I would not do in the past before I understood this was I would cause a lot of wake. I mean, I could get really, whether it's aggressive or say something stupid or whatever it is. And what would end up happening was we would take 3 or 4 or 5 days to work something out. And you do you do all the withholding and all the bullshit. So essentially what ends up happening here is you actually have power in almost every situation. And what power can look like is walking out the door and letting the energy out before you re-engage. And to me, that's everything.
Yeah. I don't want to make a distinction there that the quote unquote walking out the door is not running away.
Oh, no.
It's not running away. I don't want anybody to hear that like, well, you're just you're turning away from what's happening instead of facing it. Not exactly. It doesn't occur for me that way, right? So how it really is that when we have energy built up, right, that can feel like aggression or anger or frustration or disappointment or any of these things, it's letting yourself go to a place wherever that is. It could be walking to a different room. It could be going to work out. It could be taking a walk. It could be going and sitting and meditating. It could be cooking, like whatever that is for you. It's doing something, and it can take 5 minutes, right? It doesn't have to take that long to release that pressure valve a little bit and let some energy come through and like play through, and then see what's left. Then see what's left that you actually want to have a conversation about, because sometimes it's just a matter of contracted energy. And once that is loosened and shaken out, then there's even not a lot to talk about left. You're just like, yeah, okay. Hi, you're here. Okay. And then if there is something left to talk about that really does deserve discussion, conversation, you've let that other energy out. So it's not controlling the situation.
That's it.
You've brought the energy back down the baseline, and you can have conversation and communicate with each other from a place of calmness.
Calm focus, right? And I'm able to carry the drum beat of the steady knowing that I'm married to an angel. And I'm just using this as the baseline understanding. And so what's driving me in the conversation is that knowing. And that doesn't mean you can't have really what would be tough conversations. There might be some things that you do that just don't work for me. Same for me. It doesn't work for you. But we're coming to it from a place that I would say quite often we actually end up laughing about everything, because there's nothing beyond that baseline understanding. Everything else is kind of noise, right?
Yeah.
But the key is, and this is what I would say is the key is to get to the work to see what you can see, to seeing that in the other person. And sometimes there's a bunch of clouds in the way. There's a bunch of muck in the way that gets to, look at this incredible creature that I'm in this relationship with. That's the work. And what I would say is once I get to that, things start to take care of themselves a lot. But it's that deep knowing, right? It's that deep knowing, and not knowing. It's not, you don't have to believe this. No, you know it. You don't have to believe in gravity. If you don't believe in gravity, go try it. You know gravity is gravity. I don't need to believe this. I know who I'm married to. And that has me be able to be married to you for 1,000 years. Right? And I stay on a baseline understanding. And by the way, this is the same thing in leadership. I talk about this.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. You've got to know who you're committed to being and who you're committed to being for others. And you keep that steady drumbeat, and then you operate against that knowing. And that's a lot of my work. But as you ask in terms of our relationship, I feel we are as committed to that as anything that I've seen in any of my work over the last in all these years I've been doing this work.
Yeah.
So I hope that answered it in some way. I know that it might be a little esoteric, or maybe it sound like stupidly simple, and in many ways it is.
Mm-hmm.
Go ask your husband or your wife, what's it like to be married to me? But create a context where they can answer honestly. Be interesting to hear what you'd have to say. I mean,
yeah, and to even set that up even further, like ask the question, create that safe place so that your partner can feel like they can be really honest and about what they're going to say. And then on this side, as the one who's receiving that back, really making sure that you get yourself in a place of only listening, not getting defensive or trying to argue back or saying, I can't believe you think that, or this is just for you to listen to what the other person is saying. You receive it and you don't let it land in you like a weapon. Right? This is
not
information. No, this is information. You're going to say, what's it like to be married to me? And then you're going to be quiet and you're going to listen. And you're not going to throw it back at them later. This is just like, oh, wow, okay. And make the best attempt to not take it personally.
Well, for me, it was brutally personally. It was very painful. And yes, and if I could just layer a little bit more, and this is the thing, because people will go, okay, well, what do you do once you get this information? And what I would say, there's nothing to do. Just the understanding and the surfacing it will do what it's going to do. Like for me, I could have taken a couple of different routes on that when we had our conversation. You could have said that. Now it's out here. I could have been, well, screw you. I'm whatever. You don't appreciate me. I do all this. We got all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. That's a route I could have taken.
Absolutely.
But it's up here now. It's not hidden anymore. Or it could be that all I really want is a walking vagina.
Yep.
That might be. It's possible. Or I could take the other route. And what came up through this action figure, this thing right here, is a true desire to correct that in a way that had performance be restored to our relationship. Like, I didn't know that. So that gives me another access point that when maybe it comes up, I'm trying to pursue you one way or the other, I pause and go, am I doing this from a place of like anxious need of trying to, do whatever, how that works, some people watching this, or does it come from a place of authentic desire to connect and to be in that space? And I would say up until that time, most of my, let's just say, intimate energy was the former.
Yeah. Was coming from more like the anxious neediness.
Yeah, and I was driving hard at work and whatever that would be, more like some type of release. Yeah. Here, and where I feel like we are now, it's like, I might know a couple of days in advance that we're going to plan a night, and the night's it's just it's got a whole nother flavor to, there's not an anxiousness to it. There's just like a true feeling of being alive, Yeah. And so that, I think you asked the question, I think this is the bedrock of our, at least to this day, this hour, it could change next hour, the success and the way that we're navigating this world together.
So going back when you said you could have gone one of three ways, when I lobbed the sentence out there, I'm nothing but a walking vagina, and then you had three paths to take.
Yeah.
One, well, that's true. Two, defense. Oh my gosh, I'm doing all this. You don't appreciate me, yada yada. And then the third one, what do you think, looking back, what do you think had you make that choice? Because it could have really easily gone any of those three ways. So what had you take that route?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It just came through me. I have no idea why I do anything. I don't know what I'm going to say in the next 2 seconds. It's just coming out. I'm not planning. And so I don't know what happened in that. But what I suspect happened was what was true for me was at a deep level, I knew that I was married to you like everything is the way it should be. I'm just fucking up. Like I've gotten out of alignment with what's underneath and the knowing of who you really are. At that point, we hadn't really explored it. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation.
That was like we were just starting to walk down the path of like,
yeah, and you got an 8-year-old.
Yeah, we were running hard at that point.
And we had a lot, yes, and we had an 8-year-old, or say an 8 or 10-year-old, or whatever, something in that range, and so, but I think that's a great question. I think people ask that. What had me choose that over? I don't know. But I do believe that it is spiritually inspired at a level that is unexplainable.
Yeah.
Because people can take the other route. I mean, I don't, and in many ways, I don't see a problem with that. Maybe that's what it should have been, that you break up at that point. But for me, it just really highlighted you've gotten out of alignment.
Well, I want to acknowledge you for like when we hear something like that and it rings at a level that is so deep that we hear that and feel it and understand it as truth somewhere. And you're like, oh shit. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I can see that. And don't get defensive about it and don't run from it and say, oh, yep. Okay. All right. Well, this is something I'm going to look at. And
well, for me, it was well beyond that. It was like my life was a failure. Like I am the worst person alive. Is how that thought was like, how could you do this to you? How could that actually be occurring? Who is it over here that would create someone that would say that in an instant? So, I love what you just said. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, because I want to finish that acknowledgement of that you didn't run away. You didn't put up a lot of defense around it. Does that make sense? Like,
sure.
You didn't go, fuck you, that's not true, and I don't know what you're talking about, and you do this, and you do that, and come at it from a competitive or combative place. Right? And, can hurt my heart to hear you say it was like the worst thing ever. I'm like, oh my God.
Look, I mean,
but it's true, and sometimes truth is not easy. Sometimes truth is painful, and sometimes truth is hard, and it's the very best thing that can ever happen.
Yeah, and I guess even maybe to go a little bit further as you're talking about the truth was when that hit this nervous system, that information that you gave me, it's going to react one way, let's say one of those 2 or 3 or 4, however many ways it is. But what hit was what hit. So it was information and it wasn't planned. I mean, it really could. I could have gotten super defensive or done all that, but most likely just for the fact that I asked you that question, that I was willing to go there, probably lends itself to I wasn't going to go those other routes, right?
Yes. Got it.
Just that because there was already an energy of like, I know something's off. There's a possibility, maybe a little one, that I'm the problem here.
Like I have something to do with it.
Oh, right.
So
Right. Yeah. Well, no, it was all you. I know it was all going to be you, of course.
Of course.
Because anyway, who wouldn't want to be pursued by me like that all the time? No, but in that moment, anything could have come up. So I think and I do believe that is why creating that intentional space of inquiry is important, right? It's important to be able to create an intentional spot where an authentic reaction can come up, right? You don't want to do this on the subway. You don't want to do this at dinner. You don't want to do this with drinks.
No.
You don't want to do this with any type of mind-altering substances at all. This was done in the late afternoon with intention and whatever. Yeah. So yeah.
Last question. What would you say to men? Around this type of question, around this type of conversation? Because I know what I can hear a lot is fairly, we'll call it traditional roles of the women are the ones that want to communicate and want to hear about the feelings and the emotions. And it can be, not always, it can be a bit more of a struggle for men. Again, not always, and there's a whole gender question. We can put that to the side. We're not in that conversation. So what would you say to men around this type of, because I'm sure, if a woman is listening to this and she thinks it's interesting and would want her male partner to listen, and maybe there's an eye roll over there, and maybe like, oh God, I'm gonna, what would you say? Like, and am I clear enough with the question?
Well, I'll parrot it back and then we'll see if we're close.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I hear you saying, and I'm going to add some stuff to it, is in your work, you hear quite often that women are complaining that their men aren't willing to take a step that it seems like I took that led to X, because that's not even in their field of vision to ever even think that way, type of stuff.
Correct. Or they think it's weird, or they think it's soft, or they think it's whatever they think, possibly. Yeah.
So I will never have a satisfying answer to this because first of all, I don't know, but I'm going to posit, I'm going to lay out some possibilities, or lay out a possibility on an approach to that type of man who doesn't, let's just say, have access to this desire to want to delve into this world. Mm-hmm. I know there's a word salad there. What I would say is this. I would start with, if you knew what was possible on the other side of this inquiry, you would run to it immediately. If you knew what was possible on the other side, meaning you're not, if you don't have, now, but this is all predicated on the idea that you want to be in a relationship with someone if you're going to get in this. Now, if that's not present, then all this is for naught, right? But where I'm coming from is, if you do have a desire to be connected, if you do have that and you know it's there at an intuitive level, then what could arise in this is, if a curiosity starts to arise, what I would say is reach out. It's like, you mentioned something the other day. You mentioned like this guy, David Data, The Way of the Superior Man. I don't know if he knows that. I've known about that book for many years. You might listen to this. They could see it's a pretty hardcore book. I think it's pretty controversial at some point.
Yeah. It was written a couple of decades ago now, so it can seem a little dated.
Yeah. And I haven't read it in probably 15 years or something. But one of the things that talked about in that is, once the man gets in his full power, that what's on the other side of that for the relationship almost can't be described. It's so good, right? Yeah. So where I'm going with that is that until we actually do this work that we're talking about, a man is not going to be in his full power. He's always, unless he knows what he's creating out there, unless it's parroted back, he doesn't, and he's going to have some question. But right now, I know in my relationship with you, like, it's completely a wide open context. There's nothing here. And that's on the other side. And it means complete freedom. That means anything that I have with regard to guilt and shame, let's say childhood stuff, or something where I manipulated, or something where I lied, or something where I did something that was whatever, and then I would be stuffing down. On the other side of this conversation is a complete access to releasing that in this. Is a freedom that comes about that is not describable. So what I would say to a man is, if you're listening to this, is if anything about what we've talked about has any resonance at all, it's in you, pursue it. If it doesn't, like this is all bullshit or anything, don't pursue it. Just keep going on. There's no prescription here. But I'm saying, listen to your intuition. If you're listening to this, I don't know, is anybody listening to this with their I don't know. I don't
know.
I don't even know what I'm going to say in the next 3 seconds. So, but that's what I would say is like, if you only knew what it'd be like to sit there and tell your wife stuff, or, that is truly the things that are holding you back, with tears and letting it go. And she's the rock for you in that space. That may seem weak. It's the farthest thing from weak there. And then the strength that a man will have. And a lot of the men that I that I interact with in coaching, and even a lot of these executives who rise to the very top, the conversation we're having right now leaves that they may be super rich, 9-figure rich, and they have none of this. And my work is to inspire them to move, and we've moved that. So that's a long way to answer, is saying what's on the other side. If what we've said here is inspiring, I would pursue it. And I don't know what, in many ways, I don't even know what that says, but we just gave you one question, and that one question is the question.
Yeah. And being curious, like that's what came up for me as you were saying that. What's on the other side, and pursuing that, and what is even pursuing this type of thinking or feeling or being in a relationship. What does that even look like? I don't know, right? There is no prescription. Figure it out. Get curious. Talk to your partner. Talk to your friends. Talk to you, me, anybody. Like just being curious about this conversation and what could happen from it. There's nothing to do about it, right?
Yeah. As you're saying that, and it's sort of filtering through me, I think I was telling you this when you came into my office a little while ago, and I had just gotten off of a call, and it was a really powerful call with the client. My whole being wanted the men of the world to feel this feeling that I have at times. And I think the way I described it is, even if you had it for 1 second, it's enough for your whole life. That understanding of what's possible over there, if you get the experience for just a second, it's enough to inspire that it's possible. And I was kind of feeling that with this conversation I was having with this client earlier. It's like, I just wish you could feel it for 1 second, and I'm committed to him feeling that. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how we're going to get there, but he has a thread that wants to discover it. And it just let me, and when you walked out, it was just so like, this guy, we're going to go there. This is a super rich guy who has never experienced a lot of money and nothing like what we're talking about, which I think is true wealth. So I hope that made some sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Makes all kinds
Makes
of sense
sense.
to me. Well, I appreciate you.
Well, I think it's clear that I appreciate you. So we won't go into a big love fest here.
No.
We could. But what I would say is that other side is probably like 4 or 5 different podcasts, because it is
or 10 or 20.
Yeah. We have so much fun, and we can divulge some of it and some we don't. And you guys might be able to. We don't live an average life. We live a very wild. I mean, shoot, we just moved up in the middle of nowhere to try it out for a couple of, well, not nowhere,
Yeah, but it's, I agree. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of places we can go, and maybe we'll do that. And,
yeah, if anybody has questions, please, like, to anything that I said, I don't know where you're going to do this, post this. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
But if there's something in particular about this conversation, because I know that at some level it probably intuitively makes sense, but it might not hit right, and it might be confusing. Both of our work in upgrading the world is to be in this type of
create this type of space.
Yeah.
And I also want to be clear that, to get to this other side that we
think we're in.
I don't know.
It may end an hour or more.
I may just be done with you in like 30 minutes. But to work through some of these things, and to get to a place where we can sit and say we're better now, or it feels so good now, we're better now than we've been. There is no finish line of like a place to get to, but we've worked through a lot,
Yeah.
Like we have held our feet to the fire. We have had really difficult conversations that are intensely painful. And you can have, my point in saying that is you can go to those places. You can put on your wading boots and walk deep into the swamp and come out the other side. You won't get stuck there, right? Like you can have these hard conversations and there is light on the other side of it. Like there is beauty and love and acceptance and being and ecstasy on the other side of that. And it doesn't have to take forever. It doesn't have to, so yeah, I just wanted to add that in here at the end and say thank you.
Thank you, babe.
I love you. Thank you. Thanks for being here with me and doing this fun experiment.
Maybe we'll do it again.
I know, maybe we will. Also, I want to say I am hosting a couples retreat with a facilitator who's a master trainer in the erotic blueprints. She's a somatic sex educator. She is a master trainer for Jaya. And I worked with Jaya for an entire year in 2019 as a VIP private client. And that's how I met Connie, who I am co-hosting this couples retreat with. You will also be there. You'll be with us. And it's going to be in September. I just had the website go live today, as a matter of fact.
Did you?
I did.
Okay.
It's live today. So I'll link that out in the show notes, but I wanted to put that out there.
This is, and
Get a
really,
taste of it.
yeah, and it's in many ways it's based on a show on Netflix called Sex, Love, and Goop.
Yeah, it gives a good, it's not necessarily
based on it, but it's,
that series gives kind of a good glimpse of what is available. The woman that I worked with, Jaya, is in that series. She's one of the main facilitators. Michaela Bohm is also in that series. She actually narrates it with Gwyneth Paltrow, and you can get a glimpse of what we'll be up to.
Yeah.
If you want to kind of get that visual. Yeah. It's helpful.
And I'll be having conversations with men. Really, it's in many ways, it's applying your world to my world.
Yeah.
But from a male, masculine perspective, all the other kind of fun stuff is going to be probably done by the women, but I will be leading some work with men around my world and performance. And so there's a dual mandate there.
Yeah. Awesome. We'll talk more about that. I'll be leaking out more information as time goes on about that couples retreat. And I think we're good. We did it. High five.
That's pretty cool.
That was totally yin and yang there. All right. Anyway, thank you for listening. I will link some things that we've talked about in the show notes. And as always, you can find me at angiebird.com and on Instagram at angie.bird. And I welcome you to create some magic and mayhem in your life as well.
Take care.